Here's Brody Brazil.
Entering this week 3 of the NFL season, the 49ers have a 1-1 record, but most importantly, they'll be missing a couple key offensive players for several more games down the road. And that's why right here, right now, as they get set to face the Rams, I feel like the 49ers passing game needs to show up and show out because it hasn't really done that so far this season. I say that, the stats would indicate things are fine, but when you really dive into the details, there are some things that stand out where this team can maybe do different and do better. Here are the overall 49ers passing rankings. And in terms of total pass yards on the season, 550. They're second in the NFL. So if you just looked at that and said, well, they've been good, they've been efficient, they've been almost best in the league. Yeah, that stat does stand out. Yards per attempt, 5th in the NFL, 8.5 yards per passing attempt. Completion, 72.3%. Brock Purdy and his receivers are 8th in the NFL, but only one passing touchdown, only one interception so far. The longest pass play for the 49ers this season, only 34 yards. That's the 7th lowest among all NFL teams. But here's one that stands out to me among the most. The 49ers offensive line has allowed 9 sacks on Brock Purdy. That is the worst in the NFL. 9 sacks, including I think it was 6 last week against the Vikings. Brock Purdy just did not have much time and space to operate in the pocket, but 9 sacks is something they have to do better on to give him more time to ultimately help his receivers get open, run the routes that they're supposed to. Now, these are looking at pass catchers with a minimum of 8 targets so far through these 2 weeks. Kittle, Jennings, Aiyuk, and Debo. And there's 2 stats here, cushion and separation. So what are we looking at here? Cushion is the amount of yardage when the player lines up between them and their defender, right? So for everybody here, it's between 4 and 6 yards. And obviously Debo maybe more in the backfield, 6.4 versus 4.2 for the tight end George Kittle. Separation is the measurement of yards on average of when a player makes a catch, how close is the nearest defender. And that obviously points out here that like Brandon Aiyuk so far, he's had like 5 targets in each of the 2 games. I think 2 receptions game 1, 4 catches in week 2, but they're blanketing him. 1.9 yards of separation on average. By the way, I should let you know that the league average is 3 yards of separation per receiver with a minimum of 8 targets. So Kittle is the only one getting a little bit more space for catches than Juwan Jennings is getting less than average. Aiyuk is way less than average. In fact, last week against Minnesota, I think his separation was less than a yard on average. So he had more time and space week 1, didn't get that against the Vikings. And then Debo, who's now obviously out, still less than average, 2.5 yards of separation. So this is painting a picture for you of saying that Brock Purdy, when he's looking to pass, he doesn't necessarily have the biggest needles to thread. He doesn't have the biggest openings of where to put these footballs and complete these passes. So his receivers are not getting the time and space that they would like. There's also this targeted air yards. Again, Kittle, Jennings, Aiyuk, and Debo. So these are the yards downfield. In blue, it's the average yards downfield when Purdy throws a pass. George Kittle is on average only 6 yards, and obviously because of his position, that kind of makes sense. Jennings and Aiyuk are farther down the field, and this is what I was saying in a video the other day. I would have loved to have seen Debo in the first couple games. Now we know he'll miss at least 2 more. I would have loved to have seen him downfield a little bit more to get those yards on the catch so then he can hopefully get some yards additionally after the catch. There's also the share of deep balls thrown, 28%, so Debo was seeing the most deep balls by percentage that the 49ers were throwing. Aiyuk at 21%, Juwan Jennings at 19%. So you can see obviously those 3 were the heavy hitters so far this year in terms of targeted air yards. All right, that brings me to some overall thoughts here. Another advanced stat on Brock Purdy, his time to throw, 2.9 seconds across the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. Now, that's tied for the 8th longest. I would have to think that last week against the Vikings with those 6 sacks, and they pressured him in that pocket. Their pass protection was not up to par, I would say, for Brock Purdy. So his time to throw, I would have to think on average that went down a little bit, but he still has tied for the 8th longest time to throw, 2.9 seconds on passing plays across the NFL. Now, obviously, you're still down Christian McCaffrey. He's got the Achilles tendonitis. Mid-October is the earliest. Debo, 2 more weeks. Probably, I'll say minimum. I know he said on his podcast that's what he's expecting. Look, that's the hope. But the passing game, even when Debo was there and still without CMC, the passing game in either game so far hadn't really impacted the contest. Quite honestly, on Monday Night Football in Week 1, 49ers scored 8 straight drives, a lot of field goals, a lot of running the football, and, Jordan Mason has been fantastic. That's kind of been the offense. 2 100-yard games, and the 49ers last week had about 399 total yards, so that's about a quarter of your offense right there. The passing game hasn't impacted much yet. I will also say it sure looked like the Vikings were jumping Brock Purdy a little bit on some of those passing routes. They're anticipating what he's doing maybe better than ever. I don't know if the book is out on him or teams are picking up on some tendencies, but it's getting a little bit harder for Brock Purdy. And that brings me to the Purdy part of this. I like the way I said that. Marcus Thompson II, GOAT of writers, put this in The Athletic. He did kind of a pump-up piece. I'll link to it below so you can check it out. Basically, kind of a pump-up piece for Brock Purdy, saying, hey, now's your time to step up. They're doubting you. This is your time to show everybody wrong. The stage is set. Here's what he kind of almost pens this piece straight to Brock Purdy, Marcus does. You've still got George Kittle. You've still got Mason in the power running game. You still got Aiyuk, who is due for a big game. It's also true. You got enough to win. You've got enough to lead your team through this rough patch. This was always in the cards. Getting back to the Super Bowl is a daunting task. Oh my goodness, that point right there. I'll keep saying it, especially in the early part of this year. Last season in reverse felt easy because you forgot. You have a convenient memory. You forgot about all the hard parts and the fortunate parts. So now you're going through it again and you're like, wow, this is harder than I remember. Yeah, it's always that way for every good team. Getting back to the Super Bowl is a daunting task. And NFL teams are like crabs in a bucket. This was always going to be hard. Marcus, dude, you nailed it. Yet necessary. This is the hardship they said you can't handle. This is the cape they believe is too heavy for your shoulders. They don't believe you're one of them ones, Brock. How can I mess that up? Such good writing and such bad reading. They don't believe you're one of them ones, Brock. You better show them. That's, getting goosebumps. Like, that's firing me up. And I'm not even Brock Purdy. Great job, Marcus. So, yeah, the 49er passing game, again, in my opinion, it's time for it to do its thing, and that's going to give this team their best chance to win a couple games here in, what is a rough patch of the season, not in terms of strength of schedule, but in terms of a little early adversity for this club. You've made it here to the end of this video. I really appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. That greatly helps me in this video, in this channel, and also while you're down there, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. That way I definitely get to see you back here next time.